Hey everybody, welcome to What Drives Us, episode 345 for December 11th, 2019. My name is Russell Frost. I am your host, your host. But I have a co-host, but I'll introduce him in just a second. Anyway, on this week's journey into advanced tech mobility and sustainable energy, let's introduce the staff. My co-host, the commenting system in Skype is really like all of a sudden like skywriting. Anyway, his name is Tony Schaefer. Hi, Tony.
Hey everybody. So I've been absent from the last couple shows, a few shows, and I was moving from one abode to the other. And as you can see, there's nothing. I'm in a room with no furniture right now. So I'm happy to be back. I've missed doing the show, and I want to jump right into it. But first, I'm drinking a Cacophony Mosaic Pale Ale. I don't even know who makes this.
All right, but you have your priorities right. Yeah, forget about moving furniture or art. But I brought my beer, and I'm here.
And I'm on the show.
You brought the equipment to do the show. Exactly.
Yes.
Right priorities. Thank you.
Excellent execution of priorities. And speaking of priorities, a man who knows his priorities, as he does many things for many orgs, but most notably for us, he is part of the reason we have news on places like Twitter. Mr. Patrick Connor.
Hey, everybody. I want you all to know that I'm currently a Tesla driver, and I've been driving electric for 12 years now. So there you go. Yep.
Hey. Well, speaking of driving electric, this man is no stranger to that. He is the founder and owner of Boulder Hybrids at boulderh.com or boulderhc.com, depending on what you're in the mood for. I'll let you go to each site and figure out which one is best for you. Mr. Paul Guzik.
Hey everybody, glad to be back, and I don't know if my thing is fuzzy still.
Yeah, put it in your face, probably.
Wow, I'll tell you what, this beer I'm drinking is good.
My
the effects that you heard
is New Belgium, which is now owned by some Australian company, apparently. Citradelic Tangerine IPA. Nice beer.
Nice. And our man in the Mid-Atlantic region, luckily he got his Model X back from his FSD retrofit, so he didn't have to walk a mile in the snow today. Let's all put together a grateful, hey, there we go, Citradelic. A grateful hand to our friend, Mr. Kacey Green.
Thank you very much. So I did make a video on it, and then they updated the software 2 times, so I'm making a new video on the new software.
Iteration.
Yeah.
Iteration. And last and certainly not least, the founder and host of the Tesla Life, a longtime panelist here. He is the man who's gone through a Bolt, and now a Model 3. Was it Bolt or Bolt?
Bolt, Model 3, Spark EV.
And Spark EV.
Oh, I forgot about the Spark. Nice.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. We've got, too much news, don't we? Too much.
Oh, there'll be punches thrown tonight, folks.
They're coming out swinging. Look out.
Hey, and before we start punching anyone, I want to give some shout outs real quick. I usually wait until the end, but we've picked up some new subscribers, and I want to shout outs Frank and Norm and Javier, Kyle, Teresa, Jeff, and Larry. Thanks for taking the time to subscribe and give us some likes and thumbs up and watching the videos and stuff. I mean, we've done this for a very long time, and it's knowing that there's people who actually appreciate what we do that keeps us going. So, so thanks, everyone.
It's not the big checks from Big Oil. That's for sure.
Do you say checks or chicks?
Either one, really. We're not getting either one.
That's true.
Chicks from Big Oil. We're not getting
that
stuff from anybody. I mean, yeah, but that's okay. We do this because we care.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, it sounds sarcastic or ironic to say it that way, but speaking of caring, our first story comes from a man who cares passionately about this topic. Patrick Connor, what was in the news that interested you this week?
Yeah, so if you guys watched the show last week, one of our big topics of discussion was the trial, the pedo guy and Elon Musk trial. And I should say that I didn't mean to call him a pedo guy. I meant the trial about the pedo guy comments.
New trial. New trial.
Was this
guy.
it was the trial of it was the pedo guy in Unsworth, right? Wasn't that it?
Yeah, so that tweet that got Musk into a whole lot of trouble, got him into a courtroom, and after 4 days or so of the proceedings, the jury took a whole hour to decide this shouldn't even be in the courtroom and dismissed it, and so Musk won the trial. And hopefully that's the last we ever hear about it, but it won't be, because it is not the only jurisdiction that this was in. There's also going to be something happening in the UK. So I'm sure we'll hear about it again in a month or two when it turns up there, and hopefully it has the same result.
Because it's Unsworth, right?
Right.
Vern Unsworth. Yeah.
Vern Unsworth, and he is British.
Correct.
So
yeah.
Okay, so it could be yeah, you're right. The courts over there.
The laws handling libel and defamation in the UK differ significantly from the US. In the US, you have to prove malice.
Are the damages different as well? Imagine that they won't let him get away with his $150 million request. Pounds, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what that. Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
So,
we'll
hopefully they can just like be men, shake on it, and be like sorry, and just walk away, and let us like not have to suffer through it again.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like we said last week, this should have been about the kids the whole time. It shouldn't have been about either one of them. And no one's interested in this anymore. But yet it keeps on going.
Yeah.
Elon Musk is a dick. How's that?
Okay. Yes. Now hold on. Now, okay. Here's the thing. I don't
And
hate
a
Musk.
huge
I don't
asshole.
hate Tesla. I don't have any malice against Musk or Tesla, but it must be mentioned he did hire a private investigator.
Oh yeah, you were on the show last week.
He thought he hired a private investigator.
Well, he hired a guy who he hired a guy who was a convict, and because I did listen to the show, and I did read the article about it, but okay, so the intent to commit as we're learning in the United States about some orange man who shall not be named on the show, the intent to commit a quid quo pro, the attempt to commit a crime.
You're not going to quote that guy, are you? Come on.
No, but he attempted to hire someone to uncover dirt on Unsworth. Can you tell me he didn't?
Yeah, sure.
If the dirt was found or not found.
Right. So is hiring a private investigator illegal?
Not
hiring a private investigator to back up the claim that the guy's a pedophile?
If the guy investigates legally and finds evidence of it, that's certainly something that should be turned into the police. And if somebody with money wants to hire someone to do something legal, then what's your problem with that? It's not like he was hiring him to break into his house and steal his computer or something.
Or plant evidence.
So when Elon, the defendant, said that he never meant pedo as pedophile, but he specifically hired somebody to dig up stuff on the pedophile
because then he doesn't have
guy,
to at all.
That there's no conflict there in logic or truth or lying.
Intent.
Those do seem contradictory. Yeah, and he even at one point said that he was concerned that he was another Epstein, right? So, I mean, obviously he had some thought that it might be true. But still, it's name-calling online that doesn't need to go to the courts, in my humble opinion, and in the jury's opinion.
See, I just think that the attempting to hire the private investigator takes it beyond name calling.
It definitely goes to his intent.
They're going to lunch at me and say, why did... To me, that's intent.
Right.
It's not like he hired someone, a private investigator, to investigate someone completely unrelated to this whole thing on a topic completely unrelated to this whole thing. He very legally, he attempted to hire someone to investigate a very specific person about a very specific claim, a claim that he himself instigated. That's not random.
It's not, but if evidence would have been turned up with that, the truth is an absolute defense, and that would have gotten rid of the whole problem with this case.
It's
Well, I mean,
How-
there would be other issues.
And if they said there was nothing, he'd say, "Oh, well, guess this isn't true."
if they came out with nothing, he would say, "Oh, well, that's just something we say in South Africa all the time."
Right, which is what he said.
Yeah.
See,
He said, "See."
I mean, come
How
on.
about we move on to the next story? This has nothing to do-
Paul is the smartest guy here.
And again, I just want to make it. I want everything out on the table here. It wasn't just name calling. Money
That's your
changed
opinion.
hands. No. I asked you, yes or no, did he attempt to hire a private investigator to investigate the guy to back up the claim that he made, the name that he called him?
That's in
Did he
evidence.
do
It's
that?
indisputable. You don't
I'm
even
not-
have
That
to
is
ask
that
that
is
as a
not
question.
an opinion.
Right, but the relevance of it is. But anyway, let's go on. We've both made our points.
Okay.
As long as we all agree, as I'm sure we do, that Elon Musk is a slimy fuck.
Well, I
Thank
don't
you.
know.
No.
And I never even
Subject
said that.
closed.
And I'm going to get attacked, but I never even said that.
Patrick, I appreciate you finally kind of, coming clean on that.
Not a chance.
I would go so far as to
Not
say
a
that he's
chance.
human and he makes mistakes and he invests bad efforts after, or further efforts after bad efforts, good money after bad.
Yep.
But,
Yeah,
I mean, let all of us
it's
that are
some
blameless.
amazing- Yeah, he's done some amazing, incredible things, and we have praised him many times on this show about some of the great things that he's done. We also call out when he and other people do some not so smart things.
They
Or
both
not
screwed up.
That's
things.
Right.
He
but
probably should have told that guy, hey, when the guy said, "I'm going to sue you," he probably shouldn't have said, "Hey, sue me then." Huh? That was pretty stupid.
Yeah, I'll absolutely agree. He took the whole thing too far. But the point was, someone attacked him online, and he stood up for himself. You might not like the way he did it,
On
or
cable. Attacked him on cable.
yeah, in the
Yeah.
there you go.
Hey, Paul, I hear you have a really cool story this week.
Yes,
About
I
innovations.
think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but it's kind of real now. Seaplane company up in Vancouver, Harbor Air, did their first legitimate test flight this week. Actually, I think it was yesterday, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pure electric seaplane, 750 horsepower motor. And a couple things I thought were significant, and we can put a link to the article. But the CEO of the company actually did the test run on the plane, so they've got to have faith that it works, because
Awesome.
you don't just stick the CEO in the pilot's chair. The other thing they mentioned, and we all know this is driving EVs, he said, for me, pardon the model of the plane, it's called a Beaver, but he says flying the Beaver was like flying a Beaver on electric steroids. I actually had to back off on the power, he said, because it had so much instant torque. And then the article does go on to talk about it's going to take another 2 years of testing before it gets authorized by the Canadian equivalent of the FAA, but things look good. And then the big kicker is they mentioned that they're going to save millions of dollars on maintenance, because a gasoline or jet fuel engine has a gazillion moving parts. They have to rebuild them every X number of hours, regardless if they're working or not, where an electric motor has, one moving part. And so they're looking at the big picture. It's going to be quieter, it's going to be smoother, it's going to be cheaper, better for the environment, and cheaper to maintain. So the CEO goes on to say it could set a trend for more environmentally friendly flying, which is great. The drawback is, of course, range anxiety. With current battery technology, they're limited to flights of about 160 kilometers, which is about 100 miles. But most of their routes are that type of distance where they in the area of the country they fly. So pretty cool story. And it's kind of like a Wright Brothers event for electric planes. So.
And that range that they quote includes the safety margin too, right?
I'm sure they have a buffer in there. Yeah.
So what was the name of this company, Paul?
Harbor Air.
And no relationship to Harbor Freight.
I sure hope not.
Wow, yeah. Ain't nobody flying on that. Okay.
Yeah, if there was a Harbor Freight airline, I don't think anybody would be flying.
So
And Harbor Air, because it's in Canada, has a U in the word harbor.
Ooh.
So what happened with the Siemens sport plane EV? I know it burnt up and people lost their lives, but did they make a new one? Are they still on that program, or have we seen publicly?
I haven't
I
heard
think that
anything
program
about
is
that.
still going. They're back on the drawing board,
Okay.
but they haven't killed the program.
Okay.
And
Cool.
Paul, that of course is extreme range anxiety when
Yeah.
you're in a plane.
Yeah, but hopefully they have decent batteries and a good BMS, and it's
And the other
range
thing is it's a
indicator
smaller plane
is-
and it can glide and it's got pontoons on it. So all you need
Yeah.
is a
Yes,
little
I can-
water.
Yeah,
Right.
and most of the area where they fly is over harbors, rivers, sea, so there's always somewhere they could set down as a glider. But like I said, most of their flights are pretty short hops, and very popular airline. I think they said they transport 500,000 people a year
Wow.
on these little planes. So, I mean, if I'm up in Vancouver and I need to cross over to Victoria, I'd probably fly one of these. I think it'd be fun to go in an electric plane.
Sure.
I imagine they'll be replacing the batteries and doing more maintenance for a while they get a feel for what it can handle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious.
But
It's got to be
if you
quieter than a
think
regular.
about it, how often do you see electric cars fail because of the batteries or the motors?
Oh, not that they
Not
would
that
actually
often.
fail, just that until they get a feel for like the actual rate of degradation of the pack and the power output, etc. Just
Are you spreading
edify
electric
themselves.
vehicle FUD?
I am not.
Because if you were talking this way about Tesla, you would be out, buddy. Okay.
No, because SpaceX did the same thing when they did their stuff. They were tearing it apart all the time, and now they just refurbish it and put it back up. Like a month or two later.
Well, chances are, like others said, 160 kilometers is the range, but it's probably got a headroom of 200
Right.
or
See,
250
yeah.
or something.
I was going for the headroom and everything. It seems like they're going about it the safe way. Is all I'm saying. And my other question was, I imagine it's got to be a lot quieter than a regular prop plane.
Well, and that's a big complaint in downtown Vancouver. There's a lot of people live on the waterfront, and the existing seaplanes that are engine driven are really noisy when they come in and take off. And there's dozens of flights a day. So if you're walking on the seawall talking on your phone and a plane takes off, it sucks. But the electric planes will be significantly quieter.
Cool.
You would have to take into consideration and be polite to those people who are talking on their phones in nature.
Exactly.
Or if you're just taking a nice nature walk around a lake and something loud just disrupts it.
Yeah.
That's no fun.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it
It seems very nichey, but you have to understand the enormous land area of Canada, Alaska, and how much transportation is done by small plane. Now, we may not necessarily going to be turning back climate change with this change, but it's a huge step in the right direction. As Paul said, range anxiety isn't that much of an issue. We're talking about people that are filing flight plans. They know exactly how far they're going. They do the same thing when it's an ice plane.
Yeah.
They're carrying fuel for the amount plus a reserve and all of that. So this isn't like, oh, hey, we got to go over here all of a sudden. These are regularly scheduled runs. I mean, this is a really good use for this technology.
Yeah, I mean, like even if they're running emergency medicine somewhere, they file the flight plan. They know how far they're going. It's been ready.
And the airspace regulators and the air technology, I mean, it's so heavily regulated. I mean, every single bolt you use has to be, tracked and verified, and managers sign off on it. I mean, they don't want accidents to happen with aircraft, and it's still the safest way to travel ever. It's catastrophic when a plane crashes, but the number of miles people travel on planes versus the number of accidents is so minuscule. It's unbelievably safe.
It is.
I mean, more people get in car wrecks driving to airports than riding in airplanes.
Very true. Yeah, I did a story looking all the way out to 2070, making some assumptions about energy density in batteries and how it would progress. And I I don't remember what year, but I mean, in there I charted when like 2025 short hot planes would be running on batteries, and then at one point, I don't remember what year now. It's been a while since I wrote this. That we would have in coast to coast flights and then intercontinental flights, all battery powered, and it was kind of cool to think about. Okay, what's life going to be like? It was 55 years from now when I wrote it. That was kind of interesting.
Too bad we'll all be dead, but
Why do you plan on driving to an airport?
Unless we do.
No.
Is it 2055? I'd like to be around for that.
2070.
It's yeah.
It'd be a little bit more of a stretch. That would put me at just under 100.
Well,
Sounds like a young guy.
Tony has the next story about a new energy pack in Brooklyn.
Yes. So Brooklyn has new battery pack, and they went with a company called, it's ENEL, and it's Italian. So I don't know if it's Enel or Enel or whatever, but they installed, or they are looking to install, they're going to install 3,000 megawatts of energy storage between now and 2030. And this is going to help build the grid. And so they're going to offset peaker plants and basically just green the area in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn. And it's a short story that I found at Reuters, and it really just talks about how Brooklyn is looking to clean up the air, and they're doing the battery. But what I wanted to do was launch this into another discussion. We've talked about this several times on the show, battery storage, and the different ways battery storage can be used to supplement the existing grid and the future green grid. So, I mentioned that they're going to install 3,000 megawatts of energy, and this is going to help eliminate peaker plants. And for people who don't know what peaker plants are, you have to
You
imagine.
need to watch our show every week, and you would know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
you say peaker plants or pedo plants?
They're pedo. Yeah,
Jeez.
that's where
Don't
that's
walk
what
through
they
that
make.
garden of pedo
That's
plants.
what they make pedos.
That's what they call them in South Africa.
So,
Now, yeah, so peaker plants, you have to think about the amount of people turning on their air conditioner in the middle of the summer, and they do it in the middle of the day. And so you have all these air conditioners coming online, and the regular power plant can't supply enough energy. And that's when you get things like rolling brownouts and things. So what the utility will do is they'll bring on these smaller, usually diesel and oil driven power plants to meet that peak. Those are called peaker plants. As we've seen with Tesla in Australia, where they've installed, massive batteries, they can bring these batteries online in a split second to supplement the grid. And so the idea is, whether using coal-fired power plants or using green technology, preferably, we could power these batteries and we could store that energy. And then when they're needed, we can put that back into the grid. And that's great on a municipal level. But then you also look at the potential of installing batteries in things like schools, in hospitals, pharmaceuticals, data centers, places that need 24-hour power. And if you have a blackout in the general municipality, now you have buildings that can stand alone. And if you scale that down even more, you look at home-based battery storage. And then if you really scale that up, Patrick mentioned previous story about looking into the future and how things are going to go. Ideally, we would have a large amount of small and medium-sized batteries at companies, municipalities, residential, and everybody would be mesh networked together. Because we hear about these blackouts, whether it was, however many years ago, it was like the entire eastern seaboard went down. And the power lines in the grids in California that are causing all of those fires out there, if we had a mesh network of interconnected batteries that simply allowed electricity to flow, it gets stored from however it's generated, and it flows to wherever it's needed, you would never be able to take down an entire municipality, because even if you cut one wire, the mesh would simply move around it. And we need to move towards something like that. Exactly. It's just like the internet, that it doesn't even matter if one server goes down. There's 100 waiting in the wings or interconnected. And when I saw this article, I immediately jumped 20 years in the future where all major cities have these huge battery packs, not just one, but 2 or 3 or 4. And then,
or
like I said,
network of smaller ones in each neighborhood, so you have a resilient system.
Yep. Exactly. And I just keep waiting. Like every year, I just keep waiting for okay, somebody's going to say this, and this is going to happen, and we're going to build this. And I see this as the future of the grid, like Grid 2.0.
Yeah.
Actually, there was a story. In the Tesla Life just today about South Australia. Have a pilot program where they're allowing residential homes to install power walls and connect them to the grid. And just last week, a coal peaker plant failed, couldn't go up, and these homes contributed to the grid to keep things going. So there was no blackout.
They're sucking it out of the home.
Right. So they were taking the power from the individual homes to power the grid, so that there wouldn't be a problem. And of course,
Americans would never allow that.
Actually, there's in Vermont, there's a similar program where a power utility worked with Tesla and installed power walls there. And the cool thing is that the electricity company owns them, but they're on individual people's homes. So they can then control when the battery's being used or not used, and if there's a blackout in the area that person. The benefit that you get of having it on your house is that you can then use it during a blackout, and then the normal times the power company can use it so that they don't have to fire up peaker plants.
Yep, and in Australia, I don't know if that particular installation, but in Australia they'll pay you for the work that your battery does, and same thing. That's why that the large installation that the Tesla put in is making so much money, is because it did actually make that it earned that by supplying grid services.
Right, it paid for itself.
Yeah, to the point they are adding more to the same site. They're like, we like this. Let's go.
And we know that you have coal-fired power plants now, or natural gas or whatever. They run 24 hours a day, and they're constantly pumping out electricity, whether or not anyone uses it.
Right.
So it's perfect to charge the batteries during the day. I mean, you think about it, they would be able to throttle back on the amount of energy they generate if we could distribute and store that energy and draw from it somewhere else.
Right. You could have the grid. Right now, it has to be sized big enough to handle the worst case scenario of in the summer with everybody with the air conditioners running.
August 14th.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, literally.
It's sort of like a parking lot. You have to make it big enough to handle Black Friday, but then in the off days, you've got a lot of empty space, so that hopefully you can put up a fireworks stand or something else. So the grid has the same sort of setup. And here we can instead size it to properly meet the steady state average. And if you're generating surplus at night, you store that. You use that the next day. You don't have a problem of these peaks and valleys. You can level it out, and a level grid is much more stable, much easier to manage, a whole lot better.
Yeah.
And if you incentivize the consumer with time of use billing, so there's incentive to buy one of these setups, put it in your home, charge it up at night when the rates are cheap, run during the day, offload the grid. Everybody wins.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody wins, and it's just getting
except Big Coal.
And they're losing anyway for other reasons.
Yeah, for other reasons entirely. There.
I don't roll them into a everybody category.
You don't roll coal, Tony?
I don't roll coal. Good God!
In the Prius Prime, he's rolling coal. Right?
That's your license plate. Rolling coal.
Should get a license plate that says roll coal.
On a Prius.
or get some like black smoke emitter thing in your tailpipe and drive in front of pickup trucks and do it to them in your Prius.
I like that idea. Like a smoke grenade out with a button. You just press it and all of a sudden, you've been rolled coal, or you've been...
By a Prius.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm emitting smog.
I roll coal on you. That's so horrifying. Hey, well, speaking of horrifying abuses of our vision. Oh, wait.
Ooh, nice segue.
Let's not go there. There's this company called SpaceX. And SpaceX does a number of different things, but one of the projects that they've been working on and off, is this thing called Starlink. And Starlink is a constellation of satellites. Originally, I think the number was 15,000 satellites. I'm looking to the rest of the panel. And then I think it was down to about half that.
I thought they scaled it up.
63. Yeah.
They scaled it up past 15,000?
Yeah, like 20,000, yeah.
Yeah.
24. Yeah.
I thought they were scaling it down. Well, let's just say maybe there's a mixed message on that. I don't know.
It's a shit ton of satellites.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. Right now, there are 120 satellites up there. Starlink satellites, the first generation, which are up there spinning around. And Tony, if I send you a link, will you put it up in the?
I have a
that link
picture
right there. So these satellites orbit the Earth in low Earth orbit. Right now, there's 120 of them, and eventually someday there could be as many as 15 or 20,000 of them to complete Starlink, which would provide satellite accessible internet service around the world, or at least around most of the world. Astronomers are kind of up in arms about this because all of a sudden the night sky has lines in it. This is a 330-second exposure. And forgive me, I don't remember the name of the observatory, but you can see all those diagonal tracks are Starlink satellites. Normally, they're just getting stars or maybe one or two satellites. Because these are super highly reflective, because they're in low Earth orbit, because there's so many of them, this is a problem. Again, by some astronomers. I think the issue that I wanted to just explore briefly, at least, was this is a private company launching these satellites up into the sky.
Which has been approved by the Federal Commission.
So
they applied for it, and they were approved to do so.
No argument.
No
But
argument.
So there was. It's not like this is a company that just decided to launch satellites and did it without asking.
Doing it.
Yeah, there's also two other companies that are trying to do it as well.
Yes,
and other countries. You know, you're going to have so much space junk up there that no sun will hit the Earth.
It's not that. So the one thing I want to point out is that these things are on a regular path. You know exactly where they're going to be and when. You could just tell the computer to ignore those pixels. Yeah. All right, it's 9:55. Ignore pixels 7, 8, and 10 as it goes across.
Oh, good God.
But I'm
not sure that rationally braces the way digital imaging works.
Oh yeah, they have to.
These are huge. They can do it.
Yeah, anybody who's into has a giant telescope understands that you have to be able to compensate for that. There's atmospheric distortion and other things, and dead pixels in your receiver, and all sorts of things. So, as Kacey said, that these are easy to compensate for.
Yep. And then, so the next point with that is that Elon has offered to launch them space observatories, so that way they don't even have to worry about doing the compensation.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
One other thing that they're going to be doing apparently is the latest batch that will go up is they're changing the exterior of the units, so they're not light reflecting. They're more of a flat black that will not spread light more than it needs to.
Yep, and they're gonna. I think they said 1 to 3 of them on this next launch are going to be the trial of a couple different methods.
They're testing it, and if the test works out well, then they'll all be that way.
But I certainly will concede that if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 companies all wanting to do something like this, or countries or combinations, there is going to come a point where it's going to be trouble.
It's funny. The Iridium system was supposed to have 77 satellites, and that was like a huge network at the time.
Yeah.
And now these are order of magnitude more. It's funny.
Yeah.
Well, Iridium's a lot higher, right?
Yeah.
And they're geostationary?
I don't think they're geostationary. That
No,
was part
But
of
they
the
are a lot higher. Yeah.
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 Okay.
So
Which is
here
why they
in
didn't
the
need as
Forbes
many.
article, it says that there's Kuiper Systems and OneWeb are planning to launch similar networks. Starlink is attempting to procure approval for a total of 42,000 satellites.
42,000. Wow.
42,000.
If you got 42,000 satellites circling the Earth and you want to send a spaceship up with people on it, like,
Space
are
is
they gonna,
big.
like, hit?
No, you know
Yeah,
exactly where they're
but-
going to be, and you just make sure that you don't set it up at the same time. That thing's
Yeah,
going to
but
be
if
in
you're
your
like
way.
a second late, you're gonna like smack into one of those.
Well,
things.
Paul,
Yeah.
Paul, you do realize that with all the space junk that's currently up there, it is supposed to be tracked, and they link those into launches as well. So
Exactly.
they're looking for every piece of space junk or
Spacecraft.
existing infrastructure, and they time their launches based on what is there.
Yeah, like even a fleck of paint. Like when they do the launches to the space station, they have a 1 second or 0.9 second window they are actually able to do to both get to the space station on time and not hit anything. It's
I
incredible.
just
read
figured that it.
somewhere there's some
I-
company that's going around like space corralling, like getting all the space junk out and
Yeah, a couple people have,
With a big broom. Yep.
a big
Yeah.
lawsuit.
The first
Yeah.
one's the first one that they're going to try is a tug, and then a net, and then Starlink, not Starlink, Starship is supposed to be able to use that chopper.
It's going to become a big
Does-
Pac-Man.
does it mean-
is what's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Right now there's maybe hundreds of things up there, but when
No, there's
10,000
thousands. There's
yeah,
thousands now.
thousands.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. It's very meticulously tracked. But again, I think the part here that our regulators or lack of regulators is we didn't really have a discussion. Like how important this project is to each of those companies, I get. How important is that project to us, and what potentially we're giving up or going to compromise, or maybe nothing. Maybe we'll all just get magic internet service. But
well, it affects the whole world, right? Like,
Yeah,
who's to
sure.
say that America can own space? Like, what about China and Russia and India?
Well, Paul, let's be real. We own everything, okay? And by we, I mean the United States of America. So just, take your communist bullshit and.
Well, plus when we
No.
when we had the opportunity to monopolize it, we stepped back and made it more open. And recently, there was a satellite that launched the ability for rich people to have meteor showers on demand. So basically, you tell them when and where, give them the money, and then they'll launch like ball bearings into the correct path, so you can have your own on demand.
Jeez.
Yeah,
In your backyard?
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Free
good
party.
God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What's wrong with fireworks?
Yeah, it's so yesterday, Paul.
Yeah.
That's sad.
But yeah, you
Why
know what?
everybody
That is
send
a
shower.
that is a valid argument that if if Starlink is looking for 42,000 satellites and there's Kuiper and OneWeb, and if each of them are looking for tens of thousands of satellites, and that's the United States.
yeah.
And let's say someone in Japan wants tens of thousands of satellites, India wants tens of thousands of satellites, and
Arabsat.
China, of course.
Gets a billion.
Yeah.
So-
Wait till the Canada arm starts chucking them out. Look out.
Yeah. So we're
That Canada arm's going to be busy.
which one of those is the Facebook and which one is Bezos?
I don't know.
Don't
doing
forget
those?
Project Loon.
Oh yeah, Project Loon.
No idea. It is.
The space is big.
I'll make one of my predictions.
Yeah.
We're going to come to regret this decision.
We might.
We're going to come to regret this decision, that we didn't think it out more carefully, that we didn't require anybody that got approved had thought about this, wasn't experimenting, wasn't iterating the versions of satellites as they're launching them, and that we'd moved a little more deliberately. That's all. Yay.
Well, there also
Yeah,
is the ability, Russell, is that these satellites can be remotely moved out of orbit, burn up in Earth's atmosphere. If there's something with a particular satellite that's incorrect, or it's in a wrong orbit, or they can burn them into the atmosphere and make them disappear.
Yep, they can
and these
deorbit
particular
them.
these particular ones are so low that if they die on, it's dead on arrival, it will come back very shortly.
They're only good for a few years anyway, aren't they?
Three
at
to
this
five?
At this
I was
low
going to
orbit.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, these aren't like Sputnik
and
orbiting the world forever.
Actually, SpaceX's plan was to launch them at a higher altitude. It was the regulatory body that made them come down instead of going to the orbit they wanted to.
Because OneWeb kept filing complaints. Yeah.
Well, if you guys are interested in this,
companies have to pay like a cleanup fund for everyone they launch if there's problems, or
I think that they're now
just like the oil companies, Paul.
I don't think it's like that. I think now like they do have to make sure that they at least deorbit the infrastructure. So like the Air Force actually on this last launch, Air Force actually paid for them to do a test to see how long they could go before refiring the fuel, and then also to make sure that the vehicle came back to Earth and not just stay parked up there. Because while space is big, we don't want it full of garbage because it's dangerous garbage.
Because we have the ocean for that.
We have the ocean for that.
Yeah, exactly. We can just keep dumping crap in the ocean.
Bag.
Yeah,
They just
hasn't
charge.
Ever bitten us.
They just charge some rich bastard and tell them they have their own meteor shower, and they.
Yeah. So you get to clean it up and charge somebody for it. Boom.
Yeah,
you've made money now.
A whole new business plan.
There we go. Well, speaking of the space race, Tony has another story about another race that we're involved in that we will hopefully not lose.
This is an opinion piece from John Kerry and Ro Khanna. It was in the New York Times. And the title was a bit misleading. It says, "Don't let China win the green race." And I read this piece, and I got kind of really passionate about it because, what it talked about was there's China and Japan, Germany, the United States are the top 4 in terms of green technologies, implementing green technologies, creating a green grid, pushing electric vehicles, and all the stuff that we talk about on this show. And they are in that order. So the problem here is the United States, we've known this for years, the United States accounts for about 5% of the world's population, but we continue to consume between 25 and 27% of the world's resources, and we are one of the largest per capita polluters and waste generators on the globe. We also consume a shit ton of electricity, and we pump a lot of greenhouse gases into the air. We're really not good neighbors, and I'm sorry about that, Mark. So the thing is, we know beyond any doubt, other than people who are paid to say otherwise, that this is coming back to hurt us. It's not just an energy race for the hell of it. It's not just transitioning to green technologies because it's fun and exciting. We really need to get off of fossil fuels, and we need to transition toward these technologies. So I was reading this article talking about how China has surpassed us in renewable energy technology. They've done 150,000 patents in the last year. 30% of the world's patents came out of China. 100,000 patents in Japan. The European Union was 75,000. And what it comes to the question of what are we doing here in the United States? We're bickering and arguing as to whether or not global climate change is actually real. It is. And we're going to be the big losers, and we're going to be surprised when we no longer have a planet that we can live on. And the thing is, what really, really, really pissed me off is that when we were challenged by Russia and we wanted an arms race, we put a man on the fucking moon just because it was something to do to prove that we could do it. There was no real benefit in doing that other than proving that we could do it if we all came together and did something important. And here we are facing our own extinction, and we're 4th and arguing whether or not that's even something we want to pursue. It just really pissed me off the more I read this article about how we're losing the race toward transitioning towards renewable energies and green technologies and actually conducting ourselves as global citizens. And that just pissed me off, and I wanted to just rant a little bit on the show because Russell usually does that, and I wanted my share.
Well, the good thing is when these technologies make it more affordable, when it's cheaper to go green than to go brown, it's going to win regardless of whether or not you believe in climate change. And the great thing is we're approaching that point. That's going to be a huge tipping point, and I can't wait.
Yeah, it is, but I still want to believe that even when that happens, there are going to be people who are going to argue about climate change. And I just want to strangle those people.
Yeah, but Tony, people are still arguing if the Earth is flat, so that's never going to stop.
Right.
But,
all right, fair enough.
I don't care what they believe. I care how they act.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll act in their own self-interest once this becomes cheaper. Exactly. There's a friend of mine who also doesn't believe in climate change. He might believe that the Earth is flat. He was asking me for advice on which battery-powered tools, even though he was saying that he didn't want to save in gasoline. I'm like, well, but at the same time, he ended up buying some power tools, and now he's emitting that much less fuel. And those were two-cycle tools. So that's a lot less gook in the air.
Yeah, gas lawnmowers are horrible.
Yeah. And 2-cycle is way worse than 4-cycle because you're burning the oil instead of using it as a lubrication.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There you go.
And I'm just going to plug Milwaukee tools, great electronic or battery-powered tools.
Really?
Yep.
Better than DeWalt or Makita?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've got Milwaukee impact drivers for and bust off nuts on a car in like 2 seconds. Great tools.
Cool.
And they have like 900 tools that all take the same battery. So
that's nice.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I'd like to pretend like I knew what tools were good, but I don't use them every day. You do, so that's huge. Milwaukee tools, and
like in our shop, we don't use air tools. With the air hose and like old school repair shops, we have a bunch of Milwaukee tools with lithium batteries that are on the chargers, and generally you get a whole day out of a battery, and you swap it out and keep on going.
I thought air tools were like the backbone of any shop.
Yeah, until like 2 years ago when lithium tools came out that are just as good.
Oh, okay. I am learning things on this show.
Old school.
That's
old school.
Yeah. No.
That is so 2015, Russell.
Go Southeastern Wisconsin. Speaking of retro, well, no, Kacey Green has a story about his personal retrofit.
Yes. So right now, Tesla has been selling vehicles with their full self-driving computer since the spring for the Model S and the Model X, and early summer for the Model 3. Yes. And what that will allow them to do is get to what Elon has been calling feature complete. And right now, if you have a Model S or Model X that has the MCU2, which is the new dash computer, but has Autopilot 2.5, they are going through and upgrading you if you paid for the full self-driving feature, so that your car will be able to recycling, basically. Yeah, so your car will be able to do the full self-driving technology without having to go and upgrade your car, like trade it in, get a new one. And so supposedly what they're doing is, as your VIN number comes up, they call you, you get an appointment, and depending on what you're doing and what shop you use, they'll come out to you or you go to them. Most of the shops have elected for you to just go to them. So I went to the shop on Tuesday, actually Monday night, dropped the car off. And I had actually been scheduled for several other items. I had to get a new headliner. There was a squeak. There was a campaign that they called Shutter for the Model X and some of the Model S's, where if you apply the power vigorously, the front end would protest. And so while they were in there fixing that, I actually put in my service request. I said, hey, has my VIN number popped up? And then I heard nothing from them, even to the night before of the appointment. So I was like, hey, do you want me to show up? Because I haven't got an agreement to sign. There's no Uber credits in my account. There's no, hey, come meet us here for the loaner car. And next thing you know, I got an email that said, hey, sign for this. So I signed off on everything they were going to do. And the very last item was the full self-driving computer.
Nice.
Yeah. And the beauty of this computer is it is an order of magnitude faster than the previous computer. So the AP 2.5 computer, it can handle probably 200 frames a second for the whole system. The new full self-driving computer that's in there now, it'll handle 2,000 frames a second for the whole system. and then there's 2 of them because you need some redundancy. Yeah. So if you lose a unit, it'll be able to limp on and pull over to the side of the road. You don't want it to keep going by itself. And then while they are both running in perfect operation, they're actually running in quorum. So if they disagree, they'll shut down and say, "Hey, you take over." And inside each unit is 3 or 4 processors, and basically this is a AI chip. It replaces the NVIDIA chip that they were using, and it uses less power, and it's faster, and it's actually built for the task rather than a general tool that they have adapted to fit their needs. And so Elon has promised that the early access program, which I'm not a member of, will have feature complete by the end of the month, and we'll see. But during the installation, they put my car in service mode, so it completely disappears to me on the app. It's just a gray nothing, but it does still send notifications. So I was able to see that they didn't charge it. They left the heater on because it said, "Hey, the heater's been on for 4 or 8 hours, whatever," and it kicks it off. And it sends me a message that, "Hey, dum don't do this again next time." Yeah. and then I see that, hey, there's a software update available. I'm like, "Oh, great! I'll push the button when the shop closes at 11 p.m. and I'll have it update on my own." And because usually they don't sit around and wait for it to go. And then I see these notifications that software update failed. Software update failed. I was like, "Oh no, it's gonna be yet another 2 weeks with this vehicle out." And then the next morning, before I go into work, I see software update succeeded. I was like, "Yes!" And then they addressed everything.
I thought your car was going to get bricked in the shop.
Yeah. At least it's at the right place if it gets bricked.
Exactly.
They addressed all of my complaints. Some of them they didn't actually do anything. Like I wanted the European alarm to come out of the car because it's way too sensitive. They left it in there. But I've got an appointment with mobile that is apparently scheduled for Friday. I'll hope they're not coming to my house because they'll need to meet me at work. And they have a tool now for these MCU2 computers. A lot of them have faulty glue, so they develop a yellow square right around the border of the screen. So they stick this device, and basically they give my screen a sunburn to turn the glue back from yellow to clear.
Yeah, they hit it with UV.
Yeah, with UV. And I was a little upset when they
decided... the cool thing is the mobile service knows where the car is, so they're going to go to where the car is, not to your house.
Good point. They do schedule where to go, but you're right. He'll know where to find that. He's just got to get past the man with the guns. Hey, can you come get this car?
That might not work.
Yeah, I work at a facility that's armed guards, but so he's gonna work on the alarm system, and then the day after I got the vehicle back, I get a software update, which actually uses some of the technology on the new chip. The previous thing was kind of just for show. It would show you where all of the traffic cones were, and this thing is like a cone detector. Like if there's a cone, even if I didn't know it was there, you see it. Or if it's something you've tuned out at the back of your mind, like next to our parking garage, the 2 cones, they've been there the whole time we've been there. It's like, hey, cones. And it's a little zealous. Right now there's red fire hydrants in my neighborhood, and they show up as cones too.
Well, that's good. You still don't want to hit a fire hydrant.
This is true. And so this most recent update is 2019.40.2.1. What it did was it downloaded a new neural net to the system called Deep Rain. And what that does is look for water on my windshield. And because everybody knows it doesn't rain like Southern California when it rains there, everywhere else in the world. And right. So if I find that it's not doing well, I could push the single wipe button, and that will tell the system, hey, you're missing out, and it needs to adjust. And then, from what I understand, it also sends that training data back to the mothership so that everybody else's Tesla will learn how to handle, in this case, Northern Virginia rain, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And then they also made it a lot more confident about changing lanes. So I was able to just flick the turn signal, and the car's always watching around it. It's got 8 cameras, and it just shifts lanes pretty instantly. You get one, maybe two blinks from the blinker, and it is in the other lane.
Awesome.
Yeah, just the way a human would do. That way, you don't have those people who see the blinker and decide that, oh no, you're not going to go there. They fill the space, and that was pretty nice.
Can you adjust it? Can you make it like dickhead aggressive lane changer?
Yes. I have mine set to Mad Max. They have low, medium, high, and Mad Max, and I selected Mad Max. And so they have a feature called Navigate on Autopilot, where the car will pass slower vehicles, and it will take on ramps and off ramps and change between highways as appropriate. That is still a little hesitant to actually get started because it wants to make sure you're paying attention. But once it's decided it's going to do the lane change again, if there's nobody around.
So it's like super ways, like it will take you down residential streets if it's quicker to get home, or?
I've seen it do that maybe twice.
Navigate on autopilot only works on.
The Navigate on Autopilot. Yeah, Navigate on Autopilot won't go through, but the Tesla navigation, if that is the absolute best way to go, it will.
Okay.
But it seems to prefer highways because it likes to drive.
Well, and highways are well delineated, and
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'll take arterial roads, they'll take surface streets, and then as a last resort, it will go through a neighborhood if it has to. And it takes traffic into account. So I have mine set to reroute me if it's going to save 10 minutes. And apparently around here, that's really easy to do because I've seen it actually reroute me a handful of times.
Right.
And the last upgrade that they put that takes advantage of the new computer is they have the ability to know if you're going to run a red light or a stop sign in autopilot, and it will beep at you. The last time
will
they tried
it accelerate? Like if the light's turning red, will it go wham?
It could.
Right now, it's just a warning.
Right now
that's in the Mad Max mode.
Yeah. So the last time they tried this, they did try to do stoplight detection on the previous computer, and it worked, but it did use too much power and it generated too much heat, so they backed it back out. And I guess that they have solved that because now not only is it looking for red lights, it's also looking for stop signs, which it still needs to do anyway if it's going to be able to drive us around by, 3 weeks now?
Right.
Hold your breath.
No, I'm not in the early access program. So I'm hoping by the end of Q1, I'll be able to have a feature-complete vehicle. And the plan from that is to then run for a year under human supervision, and then they'll start applying for permission from the various regulatory bodies to get them lifted. There's a senator here.
Ed Markey.
Markey, yes. The Honorable Markey.
It's like a clairvoyant.
You are. So I have been shouting into the void at Twitter, offering him a ride in my vehicle because he seems to be governing out of fear on these autopilot system. So recently, somebody who allegedly was on Tesla Autopilot creamed was a state trooper.
Yeah.
And the person that the state trooper was trying to help. And Senator Markey railed against it. And I was like, dude, my grandmother's a constituent. Come for a ride, and then you can make up your mind. Let's. It's obvious you've never ridden with one of these. And
is he doing it out of concern or pandering to a certain voter?
The anti-Tesla vote will certainly carry all politicians to victory.
Not as a Democrat.
in certain parts of the country.
Where?
So he's registered as a Democrat in Massachusetts, and so I don't think that's a.
You're right. Not there.
Yeah. So Kacey, how old is your grandmother, and does she drive?
My grandmother does drive, and she's in her 70s.
I was going to say maybe he should ride with her, and then ride in the self.
Ride with her in a normal car, and then ride with her in a Tesla, and see where are you safer.
Okay.
And even better, ride with her at about 5:30 in the evening, right as the sun is setting, and it's harder to distinguish shapes and sizes and distances. Yeah.
On a rainy night.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
I don't think
rainy December night.
Yeah, so I offered him. I said, hey, I need to visit Grandma more anyway. So let's meet up in either in your jurisdiction or right here in the DC area, whatever's convenient. And I can drive you. You can drive whatever it takes. Because he seems to think that this thing allows you to be irresponsible. But if you try for longer than 2 minutes, it starts shutting down and stopping and parking in the lane, because there have been incidents in the past, and they are trying to curb that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see how that works out as this rolls out nationally. We'll certainly hear more stories. Of course, it's always good to hear firsthand from an owner who's done it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kacey.
So the tips I have for if you want to try it yourself is Tesla says that they will call you. They haven't really called anybody yet that I can tell. So if you already have to go in for something, just use your last line on the service request. Say, hey, is it my turn yet? Has my VIN popped up? If not, I understand. And you might find a surprise on your repair order.
There you go.
There you go.
And you might. And for our final story, we go to, yes, you, Mark. Yes.
Me?
Yes, you finally, you patient, polite Canadian man.
I wanted to, we've got some links that we'll put in the show notes. We've got 4 videos that outline basically a 3-part series was done on the CBC National, which is our national news group. Okay, this is one of our major networks that's broadcast all across Canada. They did an expose on EVs and what the current state is. They talked about the taking long road trips. They talked about purchasing vehicles, what they do, and they also talked about at the end of their life what you do with the batteries, what the recycling policies are. They talked to Jeffrey Dunn of Nova Scotia, of Dalhousie University, who works on innovative battery technology. It was a very great series to watch, and I would invite you all to click on the links and watch it when you have the time. They're YouTube links. You can pause them if you like. But what I also wanted to draw your attention to is I said there's 4 videos. The first video is the video that the CBC did a year ago about long distance traveling. About 400 kilometers or 240 miles they traveled with a first generation EV. They traveled from Toronto to Detroit. And what that, of course, did is it gave them range anxiety, because they were driving a car that would only do about 90 miles of range before they had to refill. So they took the wrong car, even under the advice of the car that was rented to them. They were told this is a city car. It's not a car for doing long range, but they took it anyways. And the piece that they did on this was almost an EV hit piece. You were watching it and going, what are they doing? They took the wrong car. They didn't charge it to 100%. They ended up taking the wrong turn. They took the wrong turn and went down a highway that they weren't supposed to, and added distance to the already range anxiety trip they had. So it was a horrible piece. We at the Waterloo Region EV Association got to actually speak to the reporters that did the piece. They came to our event this past summer in August. They were filming on site. We got to talk to the reporters, and boy, did they ever get an earful from us. We were just laying into them about how stupid could you be? What are you talking about? The guy told you it was a short-range car. So they said, you know what, we're going to do the piece again. And that's what they did in episode 1. They retraced their route with a proper EV, one that got, 300, 400 kilometers of range. So they were able to actually redo it and show how the EV could actually perform if you took the right tool for the job. And it's great. It's the 3-part piece is really great. Watch it. You'll actually even see our event in video number 2. They come to the Cambridge event. They do a lot of filming on site. You'll see my Volt. You'll see our Tesla. It's very cool to watch. And what was great was that this was broadcast across Canada for 3 nights in a row, and it was fabulous. So we will put the links in the show notes, and you can watch when you like.
Was that the barbecue?
What time was it on in Newfoundland?
That would be an hour and a half later.
Was that at the barbecue, or which event was that?
This was the event that we held in August for the National Drive Electric Week. So it was when we had the largest amount of EVs in one spot in Canada. We had the largest amount that signed up to attend the event. We had over 100 EVs show up to display.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, that's great. One of the best things is they really get into it in the third one, the last one, talking about how the batteries are made, the chemistry compositions, how and then like you said, recycling the afterlife and extending the life. And there's a piece in there. One of the key takeaways to me, and I still hear this from people who say, well, yeah, but manufacturing the EVs and you're powering your car with coal instead of gasoline, so there's really no difference. And they make it very clear that even a coal-powered EV is more environmentally friendly than any gas-powered vehicle. Even the dirtiest EV is cleaner than the cleanest petrol car.
Yeah. And of course, they also make the addition to that as the grid continues to be updated, as new power plants come online, coal's being eliminated, and the grid's getting cleaner with every day. So we're only heading in the right direction as days go by.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Good
Great
job,
videos.
Mark.
Thank you.
I mean, you're like famous.
Not really.
Yeah. Famous.
Maybe we should
nationally
get
famous.
Canadian
Famous.
famous because you guys can arm wrestle for like the most famous panelist,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you started with how stupid could you be, and they were like, let's put you on the air. Good job, though. I didn't think Canadians ever said that.
Gotcha, Paul. Let's do some shout outs and go home. We're working overtime, and that's the way this show rolls. So, Paul, I'm going to start with you.
All right. I'm going to plug Boulder Hybrids like I do pretty much every time. My website's boulderh.com for used car sales and boulderhc.com for hybrid and EV sale or service, not sales. And if you're in the Boulder, Denver area, come check us out.
Anywhere in the Front Range, Paul is the man you want to see. Mr. Connor, I don't even know how those two faces exist on the same piece of cloth without self-immolating.
AC/DC.
That's funny. That's good. That's good. I'll give you that.
Yeah, so our solar panels on our roof just crossed the 80,000 kilowatt hour mark. And I'm going to write up a little blog post about what you could do with all that energy if you had it all at once to do cool stuff with, like, how far could that make our Model 3 go? And you'll be able to find that later this month on carswithcords.net, my blog. I'm also going to write up, I've been doing this annually, what to expect from Tesla next year, and it's been pretty popular. So if you want to hear about what's Project Dojo, I'm going to be talking about that and some other cool stuff that we might see from Tesla next year, like something in the state of Brandenburg or some other cool stuff. Check it out at carswithcords.net.
Do you have like a pipeline for inside information?
I can't say.
Yes, you can.
Can you write it down?
Yeah, just give us hand signals or something.
You'll have to read it to find out what I divulge.
Carswithcords.net, folks. Mr. Green.
He could charge my Model X adventures with that. I've done 148 megawatt hours.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes. So the video of where I did that service and got the upgrade, you can find that on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/KACEYGREN. And then I've got some other videos in the pipeline as well coming out. I'd appreciate if you check them out. And I could really use the subscriber boost, trying to get to 1,000 by the end of the year, if possible.
There you go. Hey, it only took us 10 years, so... Oh. We're just slow. I'm
slow and steady wins.
Hey.
Always. Mr. Coughlin, you nationally televised Canadian dude, you. I'm feeling like I'm going to get a letter from an attorney that says you need to remunerate Mr. Coughlin for future performances, or he will not appear on the show.
Would it help if we called you Pedo Guy?
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah.
Tony, you're getting a lawsuit tomorrow, so just be ready.
Okay. Hey, it's what we say in Indiana.
We got to get Elon to call him Pedo Canadian guy.
Yeah.
If you have any interest in the Waterloo Region Electric Vehicle Association, you can follow us on Twitter at WREVA Group. or you can follow us on Facebook. Just look up Waterloo Region Electric Vehicle Association. Yes, we took the long road, but we felt it was worth it.
If you just type Waterloo EV, will Google get you there?
Maybe.
It might. Yeah.
It might.
There can't be a lot of competition for that.
Nope.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Waterloo, Iowa would really be upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Last but not least, Mr. Schaefer, bring us home, my friend.
Yeah. So I got I forgot I had a mic at my my mouth here.
Oh.
Right. So I got a couple of things. About a month ago, I posted my review of the Lexus UX. What is it? UX 250H or whatever. I don't know. I tried to forget it as quickly
Is that
as
the
I
user
could.
experience? Is it about the
Yes,
Trying to
it's the
forget
hybrid
it?
user experience. I hated it. So I named the video "A Swing and a Miss" from Lexus.
You hated it?
Okay.
Wait. Did you say the
Okay.
NX or the UX?
The UX. You are not one of the 51 people who've watched the video.
Do you know?
How sad is it?
Do you
51
know what the title of my
views.
UX 250H video is?
Tony's wrong.
The best crossover ever.
No.
Swinging a hit.
Yes.
No.
Big difference.
Oh
in
my
opinion here.
God.
We're gonna be duking
You've
it out
got to
on
watch
that.
my video. You've got to watch my video, and it's not even a hit piece because it's a Lexus, and I want to get more Lexuses, but I'm like I can't say good things about this car. I can't even pander for this car.
I
You
mean,
know,
Lost
there's-
Lexus as a sponsor.
Yeah, there are very few things I actually liked about
We
the car.
lost
I mean,
another sponsor. Paul's right.
yes, I know. I'm so sorry. And speaking of reviews, I actually did get a email from the company who loans me cars and said, "Hey, are you going to do are you going to post that RAV4 hybrid review because we did loan you a car after all?" So, by the end of the year, I'm going to be spending the last couple weeks of 2019 putting that together. Like I said, I'm in a new house. I've been kind of busy for the last few months. So watch for the 2019 RAV4 hybrid review coming out later this year or right around New Year's. And I'm really looking forward to the 2020 or 2021 RAV4 Prime. So I want to stay on their good side. So yes, I'm going to get that RAV4 review out. Also, one more thing. If you want to read the news that we're reading, make sure you check us out online. Find us at Facebook, facebook.com/whatdrivesus. And if you use Flipboard like I do, look for the What Drives Us magazine. We try to put together the articles that we talk about on the show. And then anything else that catches our attention. So if you are interested enough in alternative fuel vehicles and the future of the transportation sector, like we are, if you use Flipboard, look for our Flipboard magazine, and you'll get a lot of really good articles and information.
Excellent. Well, in the name of expediency tonight, I'm going to thank Michael Mannering, as always, for our theme music. I'm going to thank Paul, Patrick, who's that not Evan looking guy? That's Mark, Tony, and Kacey for being on the panel tonight. Thank you for hanging so late. Thanks all of you for watching. Tune in next week and find out what drives us. Right? You want to know. We'll see you next week.
Late, Michael.